Look, relying purely on motivation and sheer willpower to close the massive gap between where you are right now and your ultimate lifelong pursuit, it's just not going to cut it. If you're looking to create truly lasting change, relying on brute force simply doesn't work. What you actually need is a structural, neurologically friendly blueprint. I mean, we've all been there, right? You commit to this dramatic, massive new routine, riding a sudden wave of motivation to change literally everything all at once. But then it crashes. So why do these huge, sudden changes inevitably fail? The answer is that this approach is fundamentally incompatible with how our minds actually work.
Well, the moment you demand that your brain operates at a level it has never experienced before, you trigger subconscious resistance. And here's the thing, this early resistance, it is not a character flaw, it's not a sign of weak willpower. It is an automatic, built-in neurological protective mechanism. Your brain is quite literally wired to conserve energy and avoid the heavy metabolic cost of unfamiliar behavior. To your brain, sudden change is a literal threat.
So to bypass this resistance, we're going to follow a highly kinetic, step-by-step roadmap to build momentum from the ground up. We'll unpack the subconscious resistance problem, define your ultimate endpoint, take the smallest first step, apply the 1% principle, upgrade and stack those habits, and finally, commit to starting over.
All right, let's dive into step 1, the subconscious resistance problem. Basically, any change that is too large or too unfamiliar triggers this internal resistance, which directly leads to you just avoiding it. You know, when things fall apart, it's not because you chose the wrong destination. The pursuit stalls out because the approach was totally incompatible with how the subconscious mind actually changes. We need a method that feeds your brain the exact type of small, consistent input it can comfortably accept, absorb, and eventually put on completely on autopilot. Which brings us to step 2. Defining your ultimate endpoint. Before you take a single action, you have to give your brain's reticular activating system a crystal clear, definitive destination. You need to define your ultimate endpoint. Think of it like this. You're building a permanent castle where you'll spend the rest of your days, rather than just renting a cheap room for a short-term goal. It's a lifelong destination, whether that's complete financial independence or maybe a solid baseline of physical health maintained well into old age. Once you define that castle, it becomes a permanent yes-no filter for literally every choice you make. Does this move me toward my castle or away from it?
Moving right along to step 3, take the smallest first step.
Okay, so with your castle defined, you're staring at this massive gap between today and that final endpoint. We close that gap by bypassing the brain's threat response entirely. If your goal is physical health, your standard, motivated brain says, go to the gym for an hour, right? But in 99% reduced action, that's simply put on workout clothes and move for 5 minutes at home. We are drastically shrinking the action so your brain doesn't even register it as a risk. To make absolutely sure this step is small enough, it's got to pass what we call the zero resistance test. It needs to be physically doable in a super short amount of time, require absolutely zero prep, trigger zero internal hesitation, connect directly to your endpoint, and be one specific, singular thing. Passing this test is absolutely crucial because it breaks through the wall of zero. It hands your subconscious undeniable proof that progress is in motion, without setting off any of those internal alarm bells.
Next up, step 4, the 1% principle.
So after you take that initial tiny step, we deploy the ultimate resistance management system. We're talking about compounding habits. Look at the math on this progression. We aren't adding massive chunks of time. If your baseline is just 5 minutes, a 1% increment is literally 3 extra seconds. That's it. Small, consistent gains multiply rather than just add up over time. And because that 3-second bump is practically invisible, the subconscious doesn't flag it as a threat at all. The math here is honestly staggering. Getting just 1% better every day doesn't make you 365% better in a year. The compounding effect makes you roughly 37 times better. But here is the catch. You only apply these tiny little increments on a fixed schedule when your current level feels entirely automatic. It should require zero motivation. Actually, scratch that. If it feels even slightly hard, you just stay at your current level until it's effortless. Which leads us to step 5. Upgrade and stack your habits. Eventually, this new behavior is going to feel completely effortless. When it takes absolutely zero mental prep to get started, it's time to hit the gas and deliberately upgrade just one of 5 dimensions: intensity, frequency, scope, duration, or complexity.
For example, you might upgrade your scope by moving from just free writing to structured drafting. You elevate the habit, set that as your new baseline, and then just restart your 1% progression from there.
And to make absolutely sure these habits stick, we use habit stacking. This is a real game changer. By borrowing the trigger and momentum from a deeply ingrained daily routine, think brushing your teeth or pouring your morning coffee, you dramatically lower the activation energy needed to start something new. Just make sure the anchor habit is genuinely automatic, the physical locations make sense together, and this is key. Always have a 60-second fallback version in your back pocket for those days when you're short on time.
Finally, step 6, commit to starting over. Look, life happens. Every single system encounters interruptions, but the real danger isn't the broken streak itself. It's the cognitive distortion that makes us delay starting again. We tell ourselves, oh, I'll just wait for a fresh start next Monday, when in reality, that's just your old patterns creeping back in. To fight this, we lock in the never miss twice rule. This acts as an absolute non-negotiable law. It completely removes those in-the-moment decisions fueled by accumulated guilt or a false sense of lost progress. One missed day, totally expected. 2 in a row, that is where a break turns into a pattern.
So, when you do inevitably miss a day, do not demand a perfect return. Your muscle memory is still there. You aren't rebuilding from zero. You're just reactivating what you already built. So you simply return immediately at a reduced, effortless level. Starting over isn't a failure state. It's quite literally a built-in feature of the whole shebang. I'm going to leave you with this thought. We've seen exactly how sudden change triggers subconscious resistance. But by defining your ultimate endpoint, taking the absolute smallest possible first step, compounding it by 1%, stacking those upgrades and committing to that never miss twice protocol, you are actively rewiring your brain through continuity. Every tiny action is piling up undeniable evidence of who you're becoming. And a pattern that always returns is one the brain eventually just accepts as reality. So if everything you are working on right now succeeded, who would you be? And more importantly, what is your smallest first step going to be today?